Hey guys, I'm currently on a kind of politics cleanse where I'm trying to remove everything politics related from my life, and it's been really good. I would highly recommend it. Um, I like basically everyone. I think everyone above a certain age. I was kind of addicted to and a bit obsessed with politics, and especially now, I think things have gotten incredibly toxic and kind of confrontational and heated. And it's been quite scary at times. I've been quite worried about the kind of political climate we live in because, and it's funny when I say that, and there'll be a lot of examples of this throughout the video. When I say I'm worried about the political climate we're in, I know that most people watching, they will take that either in a left or a right wing direction, and I would do the same generally. You go, oh, well, that's because of the right, or oh, that's because of the left. I know what he means. I'm worried about it too, and it's because of the left. It's because of the right, and you immediately sort of gets fed right back into that same kind of sort of deranged political brain that we all have. But I think generally it's worrying. Being sort of neutral, I think it's kind of. Why am I bothering? It's a fucking mess anyway. Let me squash that shirt down to make my room look tidier. It hasn't done anything. I think generally it's a mess. I think it's it has been certainly a really bad situation for a while politically, and a lot of people don't speak to each other. A lot of people don't speak to certain family members. A lot of people have very tense relationships with their families over it. I wouldn't say I've massively had that. My familial relationships tend to kind of transcend that, but it's there. It's definitely there. There are definitely some quite uncomfortable political disagreements within my family, really between me and the rest of my family. and in life in general, socially, I have one friend who I quite a long time ago, kind of after October 7th, I instituted a politics ban. I was like, we're not going to talk. I was like, we're not talking about Israel and Palestine anymore because we will not be friends if we carry on talking about it. The conversations were so unpleasant and so stressful. And sometimes I'd be at 2 a.m. you fucking idiot, and just texting him. And again, even now is a good example, right? I mentioned Israel and Palestine, and it probably some people, instead of thinking about what I'm talking about in general, you're probably thinking, what's his stance on Israel and Palestine? What's he say? What is he saying? What does his friend think? What does he think? Which one of them is a fucking idiot who needs to be educated? And that's how things have become, basically. And we don't live there. We don't live there. I'm not going to say it's nothing to do with us. Of course it is to some degree to do with us, and there's foreign aid and all of this stuff, but it should not matter as much as it does. It just shouldn't. And it's bullshit to say that it matters purely because of empathy, and that's bollocks. That is absolute bollocks. There's a lot of outlets for empathy. There's a lot of very productive outlets for empathy where you genuinely help a lot of people, and they're much more effective than fighting over politics. Empathy is not the primary sort of motivating factor for people to become emotionally invested in foreign conflicts and things like that. It's just not. It's there, and for some people maybe it is. For some people really, their heart just breaks seeing these things, and that's why they get so involved. But that is not what is primarily driving this. It's just absolute bollocks. So yeah, I've seen that in myself a lot, and with in the UK, for example, I mean, there's not going to be an election for 4 years. I know who I'm not going to vote for. I know who I will probably vote for, or I would. I don't know if I'll still be eligible for an overseas vote by then, but I know who I would vote for, probably. It depends how things change. I know who I'm not voting for. And again, I'm not going to speculate here. This isn't going to be about what I believe or don't believe politically. But what's the point? What's the point in me continuing to pay attention to it? What's the point in me getting so actively involved in such a detailed way and sharing links with people and going, do you see what this fucker did? What's the point? Most of the time, it's not going to achieve much. I do understand that it's important to be educated, to a degree. It's important to know what what's going on in the world. I'm not saying we should just be completely blindly ignorant, and I don't think that's good, and I think that's like a danger, and that has, I think, with, to be honest, with previous generations, that has kind of been a problem. I don't know if it's just his particular demographic or social group, but I've noticed, like, with my oldest brother's generation, so he's about like 40 or so now, I feel like they were generally a pretty chilled out and normal generation, but maybe some of that was like they weren't super interested in stuff, and maybe I'm completely wrong. I might be completely wrong and massively generalizing, but I feel like we've become a lot more political than them, and the people who are slightly younger than me, who are like in their mid-20s, late 20s now, are like very political. And some of the older generations, the boomer generation stuff, they're like very political. So it seems to sometimes kind of bypass certain generations a bit, or be extremely pronounced in certain generations. I think at the moment, since like 2016, to be honest, it just went like crazy. It's not normal. The extent to which we're like wrapped up in and invested in politics is not normal or healthy. I am predicting that will change quite soon. I think that people are becoming bored, and maybe it's because I'm just using myself as a barometer, and I tend to feel like I can detect these things ahead of time, and I'm probably very possibly wrong, and maybe it's just an arrogant assumption on my part, but I feel like the fact that I very suddenly was like, I'm so fucking bored of this, and it's stupid, and I'm done with it, and it's a waste of time. I feel like there's a reason I feel that. I don't think that's just personal. I think that's to do with what's been going on, and I feel like other people are going to start to have that feeling, and I'm maybe even seeing it in people a bit. I think part of it is because we've had both sides of the political spectrum, and those which I would include myself in, to be honest, of us in the centre, not that other people would agree, have had kind of, in quotes, what we've wanted. Now, none of us have ever had what we've wanted politically, right? Like, I think it's been a long time, really, since the public have had a politician who was a real politician, who people liked and who was actually genuine. I think in America it was really Kennedy, and I think after he died, it just seems to have been a stream of nothing but shit. And well, I'm not even going to start on the on the conspiracy theories and whatever else. But basically, we've all come to accept. It's been an accepted notion, certainly since I was born. Like, oh, politicians are all the same. They don't do anything. They don't care. They don't change anything. And there's this strange feeling there was always this strange feeling of kind of apathy about them, and a cynicism that that was a kind of lazy sort of pub cynicism. Like, they're all the same, they don't do anything, they don't care about the people, they never benefit us, they're all in it for themselves, they're all rich, they're all lining their pockets, blah blah blah. And that was quite a predominant kind of cynicism when I was younger, and it was broadly true, and still is. But it's dangerous in a way to be that cynical. It's dangerous because you can completely lose not lose control, but you can fail to realise, like there is a difference between different candidates. It's not like there's no difference. There might not be as much of a difference as we would like, and it might not be. Sometimes voting can feel pointless, but there is a difference. It still makes a difference. We still, to some degree, live in a democracy, even if it's not really as democratic and we're not as represented as we would like to be or should be. It's still a democracy. With different parties and agents with slightly different agendas, but even if ultimately a lot of it comes from the same place and comes from the same people and doesn't really, the differences are partially, I think, like an illusion. But anyway, that's not something I want to get into. I think around 2016, two things happened at once. And again, I'm not trying to get into like my own beliefs here. And if you are like me and have a tendency to project your own views, try not to be offended. I'm just talking about what I think has happened. There was Trump, which obviously was kind of like served as a kind of like messiah for the right, and then at the same time there was an increasing there was the kind of rise of what we would generally call the woke movement. Although I think people who are sympathetic towards those ideas resent the use of the term woke, but that's just what it is, and it's a completely valid term, and it can be explained and defined, and it is a valid term, and it is a real phenomenon. But anyway, it doesn't even have to be a pejorative, but it is a real thing. Anyway, these two things happened. You could say, broadly speaking, the alt-right movement, the woke movement, they kind of happened at the same time, and they kind of ignited something that I think was lying dormant in people, or that had been... I'm just going to close the window because of this drilling. One sec. All right, I'm back. So we had these two kind of concurrent movements, and I think they ignited a lot of hope and enthusiasm, and also a lot of like anger and negativity in people. From both sides, and kind of fed into one another in a pretty horrifying way, and both movements have attracted young people quite well in a way that prior to that I don't think politics was particularly interesting to young people. And both these movements, managed to get young people very kind of emotionally invested in politics. And I think we've seen the fruits of both of these movements. I think we've seen the results. I think we've seen that things are not very good. I think we've seen that, as I said, I mean, not really, but to an extent, both sides have kind of had what they want. So we've had kind of we've had various kind of right-wing populist leaders, and we've had various kind of slimy neoliberal kind of I would say at least kind of woke pandering politicians. I don't know why this is so zoomed in, and I don't know how to zoom it out. Hang on. Anyway, so basically, without wanting to get into all the details of all of it, I think both sides have kind of had, not really, but sort of what they wanted, and basically, I think we've also had a lot of time to fight and get our opinions across and listen to other people's opinions and do all of this, and I think long enough has passed now. It's been a good sort of 8-9 years of all of this. And we can kind of look back and go, what have we really achieved? Yes, we might have achieved some things. At what cost? At an enormous, enormous, enormous cost. An enormous social cost, just crazy. I mean, the social cost of all of this has been unbelievable. People are so divided. Socially, it's extremely difficult. I find it very difficult to make and maintain friendships because of politics, to be honest. For me, it's quite difficult. It's boring. It's not fun. It's addictive. It's stimulating. It's extremely stimulating. It gives you a lot of adrenaline. It's not fun. It's not fun to get into politics. Watching debates about Israel and Palestine, heated debates, and reading the comments and arguing with people, that isn't fun. That's not joy. That's not happiness. It's stressful. It's addictive. It's compulsive. It's adrenalizing. It's whatever the word is. It's not nice. It's not a good way to spend time generally. I'm not, I am generalizing. I understand that there are people who this really is just their hobby and they really care and they, whatever, suit yourself. I'm speaking for the average person, and I think, or attempting to, and I think that for most of us, this has been an extremely negative thing. And to be honest, I know some people who, if I'm being honest, they're not very smart, and they get really wrapped up in politics, and they're pretty dumb. They're not very logical. They don't really have any they're not open-minded anyway, so they don't scrutinize their own views or beliefs. They're not really willing to consider any different points of view, and if they're ever proven wrong, they just put their fingers in their ears and close their eyes and go la, 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 and just don't listen to what anyone else is saying, and they already know what they think and they're never going to change their mind, and they've taken something the same way that kids decide on like a fashion, I'm going to be a goth and that's who I am. They decide I'm this, that is what I am. I've put this suit on politically, and that's it. So what's the point? What's the fucking point? Like, what's the point in spending all this time on it? It's boring. It makes you into a prick. It makes people not like you. It's not fun. And what's the point if you're not even really going to engage with it in an intelligent way anyway, and you're just going to use it as an excuse to squabble with strangers on the internet, or even worse, with people you know in real life, with friends and family? What's the point? So I'm predicting and hoping that a lot of people are becoming bored, and I'm kind of sensing it. I'm sensing it a little bit, that people are just bored. And I think another thing that's helped, and again, I'm trying to avoid getting specifically into things here, but the enormous letdown for a lot of people of Donald Trump not releasing the Epstein files, things like that, I think are quite unifying, because it reminds us that there isn't really an us and them as in left and right. There's really an us and them as in there's us, normal people, citizens, people who pay taxes, people who live with one another, and then there's the kind of elite ruling class and the people who have more power than we can even comprehend, and who can control our perception of reality, and who control information, and who ultimately tend to have their own interests, front and center. And I think things like that are quite a useful way of reminding all of us of that, like that it's, yes, it's very wrapped up in politics, but the Epstein thing is not really a left-right issue. I mean, like, if you care about, like, child trafficking and stuff, people will say, no, it is because the left say this or the right say that or whatever, again, but it's not, and it shouldn't be. And I think it's something that generally transcends most people's kind of ideologies, and it's just something that's just wrong. It's powerful people doing like the most disgusting, evil things imaginable. So I think things like that are beneficial. I started my politics cleanse before that, but it reaffirmed it. Like, I was like, yeah, this is just bollocks, really. Like, what a waste of time. What a colossal waste of time all of it is. And yeah, I started it before that because I was realizing as well. Me and my girlfriend, we got to like walk the dog, and obviously we're around each other all the time, so we don't have a lot of like life updates to talk about. So then all we would talk about is like rage bait political content, and like just wind each other up with talking about stuff we saw on the internet or something that some idiot said or something, and it's like so pointless. And after a while we'd start going, all right, let's not talk about politics for the rest of this walk, because this is stupid and it just stresses us out and makes me feel depressed. So we would try and not talk about it, and then we didn't have anything else to talk about. And I started realizing I've filled my life with this, and whenever I'm like listening to it, because when I go to, for example, to make breakfast or something, I put YouTube stuff on my phone speaker and just listen to it while I'm like doing shit, And it was just all about politics and like war and stuff, and that was all I had to talk about, And I was like, man, I used to be different. I used to have like a young mind, And I used to be imaginative, and like, I used to have a laugh. I used to find stuff funny, and I used to think about silly stuff, and I used to want to be entertained and intrigued and inspired and amused and things that are positive. I didn't want to be like stimulated and infuriated and wound up, or to feel superior to someone else because they're so stupid and I'm so correct, and how do they not understand? I didn't want those things that much before, and the only reason I want them all the time now, or I did, is because I made myself addicted to them. And it's the same as a lot of things. If you watch porn all the time, you just become addicted to porn. You expect to see porn every day or multiple times a day. You just get used to it, and then when you stop, your body and brain is not as used to that, and you just expect certain stuff, You can go too far the other way, I think. Like, there was a time in my life when all I was doing really was listening to like mind-numbing, like silly podcasts and just like laughing and stuff, and I was probably maybe I'd gone too far that way. I do feel there's definitely a risk of going too far the other way, getting too far away from politics and becoming, completely disinterested in what's going on and just interested in just being entertained and amused. I don't think that's good either. I think there has to be a balance, but there isn't a balance at the moment for a lot of people. And, most of us can barely get through like a normal fun activity without like either just becoming bored because we have no attention span or politicizing it. And I noticed it. I think the way you see it is when stuff happens that's like not really political. For example, when we talk about like, in the West, the left and the right, a lot of stuff happens that like shouldn't really be a left-right issue, and it becomes one. Epstein was one that kind of got turned into one. It's not the best example of it. COVID, I'd say in some ways is a good example. There are aspects of like a public health thing that definitely can legitimately pertain to left and right politics, but it shouldn't really be a left and right thing to the extent that it is, or was. There's a lot of examples, events that have happened, big things that have happened in the world, that, or Ukraine and Russia, immediately it was like a kind of left and right thing. And that isn't really a left and right thing. Like but everything gets filtered through that. Every event, we can't all just go, oh, actually, I actually agree with these people who I don't normally agree with on this. Or I just have an opinion on this that doesn't relate to who I am or what tribe I'm in or what I typically think or which people, I think most importantly, which people I want to disagree with. Because I think that's what generally happens. It's that you think, what do they think? Because I don't like them and I want to think the opposite of what they think. I want to be on the other side of this to them because I don't want to agree with them and I want to tell them that they're wrong and I want to rub their faces in it. I think that's pretty common, really. And it warps your own sense of reality, like with Epstein, right? It's child trafficking. Like that shouldn't be politicized because then you're forced. It should be important to you either way. And we've had we've had a comparable-ish thing in the UK with the grooming gang scandals, and it's horrible. And I've seen in a lot of people, they're so wrapped up in politics and with being on one side or the other that they can't allow themselves to simply care that lots of children were extremely severely and horrifically abused. And it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, like it's important as a human being to care about stuff like that, particularly when it's happening in your own country and it's often very near to where you live. Like, it's important. It's important to just be normal in that way, to be upset by that idea and to not go, right, what do they think of it and how can I dismiss what they're saying and how can, we shouldn't be like that, really. It's dangerous, I think, and it's dangerous for our own psychological well-being, and it starts to, then you're forced to kind of refract reality from yourself, and the more you do that, the more I think it fucks with your mind. You become less in touch with reality in general, and you become more able to lie to yourself and manipulate yourself, and you just become like a fake person. Really, if you're gonna care, you should care from a genuine place and really genuinely deep down believe what you're saying, or just don't bother. And I think for a lot of us, it's better to just stop bothering, really. So I'm trying now, like I started just putting on like funny podcasts that I used to enjoy back before all of this. I used to just enjoy listening to them and just have a laugh. I don't need to be gaining something from it. I don't need to be gaining some knowledge that I can use against people. I don't need to be winning a debate in my own head. I just have a laugh and enjoy it and just like chuckle listening to some people tell like stupid stories or whatever. And at first it was really difficult and I didn't want to do it. And I kept thinking like, I don't want to listen to this. I want to listen to, something else that's more like, giving me all this adrenaline. But I started doing it and now it's normal. And now I just go, I'll just pop this on. This is fun. I just have a laugh. And I can feel myself becoming more relaxed and more, my thoughts are more pleasant and I don't care as much. And a couple of times when I've sort of said to people who've brought up politics, I've sort of said, I'm not really getting into all this anymore. But a couple of times I've had conversations, and what I've noticed, I spoke to my mum about it yesterday because we have quite a lot of like disagreements politically, and it's been a bit awkward because 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 she's getting on a bit, and because I don't really want to argue with my mum, So, but there's also some stuff that topics have been hard to avoid because they've very much intersected with our own lives, and I've always tried to avoid it with her because she's my mum. But we've had like arguments about it in the past, about politics, and something came up the other day, and I said I'm kind of having like a political cleanse, I'm getting away from it for a while. But I said, since you brought it up, blah, blah, blah. And we had a brief conversation about this thing. And I felt immediately, I didn't feel like I was on a side and she was on a side. And I had to win, and I had to convince her, and I had to show her why she was wrong. And I was just talking about this topic from a place of more detachment. And I felt I was probably being a lot more reasonable. And I think that's something that we kind of owe to ourselves. As I said, I think it's something that's going to happen. My prediction is within the next few years, we'll see that like people have started to reject politics and find it very boring. People, at least, maybe for the younger generations, they'll get engaged in different ways. But I think for us, for people who've been really invested in it for the last 8 or 9 years, who's not a bit bored of it deep down? Like, who's not running out of ways to make this engaging for themselves, and running out of ways to convince themselves that their beliefs are so important that it has to, they have to take up their entire lives. It's not that it's not important what you think. It's not that none of it matters. It's not that you shouldn't have opinions. It's not that you shouldn't care about other people's opinions. But should it take up your life? Should it be, for example, if you're say you're very left-wing and you have a friend who's very right-wing, should your beliefs be more important than having a fun time together, hanging out and like having a barbecue or whatever? Should your political beliefs be more important than like crying, laughing at something that happened between the two of you, remembering some like funny story that happened? Should it be more important than that? Because that's pretty fucking important. Like, you get one life, and to be close to people, to be close to your family and your friends and the people in your community, like, that's really important. It's not a small thing. It can be trivialized because it doesn't have an immediate, function or whatever, but that is the point of, it's really the only thing that's like good about life, is being with other people. And so is it worth ruining all of it over this stuff? And I know not everyone does. Some people watching this, I'm sure, don't, and have a healthier balance, but I think a lot of us have completely lost that balance. And, yeah, is it more important than relationships? And then and it used to be, I don't know, I just remember it used to not be such a thing, really. Like, when meeting new people and dealing with people, and obviously partially that was my age because I was younger and whatever, but I don't know, it's there's a lot more to life than that. There's a hell of a lot more. Like, and although it's difficult, and it can be very difficult to bypass like political differences between people, but I would rather be friends with someone who has different political opinions to me, but very similar on a personal level, than someone who kind of echoes my same opinions, but on a personal level I don't like. And I also see people who are on the kind of the opposite side of the political spectrum to me, who at least they're very sincere and they mean what they're saying, and they're open-minded and thoughtful, and they listen to others and stuff. And I like those people. And then there's people who are kind of on my side of things or whatever, and they don't really believe what they're saying, and they don't care what other people think, and they're not open-minded, and they're not willing to change their views, and they're not thoughtful or intelligent, and I don't like them. And it's important, I think, to see value in one another beyond just whether we agree or disagree, basically, on and tick the same boxes ideologically. But what I would fully recommend is try, at least for a month or so, to get all this shit out of your life and just to not look at it. And after a month you might go, this is pretty good, actually. Like, why do I care about shit that's happening on the other side of the world? Why am I getting into arguments with strangers online when I could be like finding like fun communities to be part of and have a laugh? And also doing so, if you're like, for example, if you're on the left, like, well, then surely it would be beneficial for your values of like community cohesion for everyone to get along well, right? And if you're on the right and you value maybe more traditional things or more, well, isn't also at the same time, uh, living your life and being close with family members and doesn't that also kind of benefit your overall kind of political agenda? So either way, I don't think there's anyone whose political beliefs state that we shouldn't have, apart from extremists, I don't think there's anyone whose political beliefs state that we shouldn't get along with each other and that it's bad that we get along. So either way, that, fits in with your beliefs, most likely, that we should ideally get along and like have fun and be close to one another, and communities and families and people should be, closer together. And I know there's probably people going, no, they don't think that. The left don't think that. The right don't want that. There's people immediately getting worked up at the idea of me saying that, even, I'm sure. Maybe not. Maybe I'm projecting. But I do feel like, that, there will be a tendency to go, no, you're wrong. You're wrong, actually, Big Dome. They don't want that. And here's why. And here's why they have to be stopped. But no, I think really, that's pretty much a good thing from whatever perspective you look at it from. So, yeah, we should fucking try and enjoy our lives more, man. This shit is boring. No one's happy. No one's having a laugh anymore. No one's having fun. And it's depressing. Let's fucking have a laugh, man. Jesus Christ. It's been enough, Where's all the humour gone? The internet used to be funny. Like, Twitter used to be a place for comedy. And the internet used to just be silly. It used to just be a place for fucking comedy. So, yeah. Fucking bring back silliness. That's what I'm saying. Alright, guys. I hope this was helpful to someone in some way. Thanks for watching. And, take care.